I grew up in a small neighborhood in the late 90s. The kind of place where everyone knew each other, and most of the houses looked the same. But there was one house, the one next door to mine, that was different. It was always empty. Shutters closed, lawn overgrown, paint peeling from the siding. People whispered that it was abandoned after the owner disappeared years ago. But no one ever confirmed it. From my bedroom window, I could see straight into its upstairs window. Most nights, it was just black. But sometimes, I swear I'd see movement, like the curtains shifting when there was no wind. When I was 13, I started keeping a journal, and almost every night, I wrote the same thing. Light in the window next door. Curtains moved. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but it kept happening. One night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. and glanced out my window. For the first time, I saw it clearly. A light was flickering in the abandoned house's second floor. And behind the curtain was a silhouette, perfectly still, just watching. I ran to my parents' room to tell them. But when they looked, the light was gone. The window was dark again. Weeks went by. The sightings grew more frequent. Always between 1 and 3 in the morning. Always the same window. Sometimes the light. Sometimes the figure. Then came the night I'll never forget. It was summer, and I had my window open for air. At around 1:40 a.m., I heard it. The sound of glass breaking from the house next door. I sat up, frozen, staring at that upstairs window. The light flickered on, and this time, the curtain was wide open. The figure was standing there, closer than ever, and it was facing directly at me. I dove out of sight, heart pounding, convinced it had seen me. Minutes passed. Silence. Finally, I gathered the courage to peek over my windowsill. The light was still on, but the figure was gone. That's when I heard it. Not from the house next door, but from inside my own. Footsteps. On the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Coming up toward my room. I wanted to scream for my parents, but my voice caught in my throat. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door, and then 3 slow knocks. I sat there shaking, staring at the handle, waiting for it to turn. But it never did. When the sun rose, I finally worked up the courage to open the door. No one was there. But on the floor, right outside my room, I saw it. A single muddy footprint, leading back down the stairs. The next day, I asked my parents again about the house next door. They exchanged nervous glances. Finally, my dad told me something I wish he hadn't. He said the house had belonged to a man who vanished one night. No one knew where he went. But the neighbors claimed to see him, years later, standing in the window watching. It's been over 20 years since then. I don't live in that house anymore. But last month, I visited my hometown. The house next door is still abandoned, still falling apart. But when I drove past it at night, that same upstairs window was glowing faintly. And behind the curtain, I could see someone standing there. This happened when I was about 16. My parents' house had an old, unfinished basement. I always hated going down there, but one night, I had no choice. It was around 10 p.m. when my mom asked me to grab a box of old photos from the basement. I grabbed a flashlight because the bulb down there never worked right. The stairs creaked under my weight as I went down, and the air grew colder with each step. That basement always smelled like damp concrete and rust. I was halfway across the basement when the overhead bulb flickered to life for a moment. The light buzzed, then went out completely, leaving me in pitch darkness. I froze. That's when I heard it, a faint rattling sound, like chains being dragged across the floor. I tried to tell myself it was just pipes or the old furnace. But then came something worse, a whisper, clear enough to make out my name. It sounded like it was coming from the far corner of the basement. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight, and when I finally got it back on, the beam landed on something that shouldn't have been there, one of my childhood toys. A stuffed bear, sitting in the middle of the floor. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me. My parents laughed when I told them. They said I probably left the toy down there years ago, but I knew I hadn't seen it in forever. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing that whisper in my head, over and over again. The next morning, I tried convincing myself it was all in my imagination. But when I walked back into my bedroom, the stuffed bear from the basement was sitting neatly on my bed, its button eyes staring right at me. To this day, I have no idea how it got there. I never went into that basement again. And even now, whenever I hear a whisper in the dark, I wonder if something from down there followed me up.
I was driving home late one night after visiting a friend out of town. It was a quiet highway that cut through miles of woods with almost no traffic at that hour, the kind of drive where you roll the windows down just to hear something besides your own tires. It was close to midnight when I saw her, a woman standing on the shoulder of the road, holding her arm like she was hurt. She wasn't waving, but she looked stranded. I slowed down. My first instinct was to keep going. It was late. I was alone, and it didn't feel safe. But something about her made me stop. I pulled over and rolled down the passenger window. She leaned in slightly, her hair covering most of her face, and asked softly if I could give her a ride into town. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She got in, sat silently, and stared out the window as I drove. Every so often I glanced at her. She didn't move, didn't shift, didn't even blink much. The first red flag came about 15 minutes in. I asked where in town she needed to go. She didn't answer. She just turned her head slowly toward me and said, "You'll see." Chills ran down my arms. I tried to laugh it off, but her face stayed blank. When we finally hit the first streetlights near town, I turned to point them out, but the passenger seat was empty. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The door was still locked. The seatbelt was untouched. It was as if she had never been there at all. I drove home shaking, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. But when I pulled into my driveway, something made my stomach drop. In the reflection of the rearview mirror, just for a split second, I saw her, sitting in the back seat, smiling, and then she was gone again. The next day, I told a coworker about what happened. He went pale and asked me exactly where I had picked her up. When I told him the spot, he nodded slowly. Apparently years ago, a woman had been killed by a hit-and-run driver on that stretch of highway. Locals say she still tries to hitch a ride home. I didn't believe in ghost stories before that night, but sometimes, when I drive that same road, I catch myself checking the rearview mirror, and once, I swear I saw someone sitting in the seat behind me, just for a second.